At the Seder, we're supposed to have the three mitzvahs, three things that we're responsible to eat min Torah, and they are Pesach, Matzah, and Marror. Pesach, the Torah is very clear what a person is supposed to eat for the Korban Pesach, and describes in full detail what it should be like. The Matzah, the Torah doesn't describe as well what the matzah is. Doesn't describe as well what the matzah is, but the Gemara learns out that matzah has to be made of the things that could become chametz. There are 5 grains that can become chametz, and when you bake it in the proper way, those 5 grains are made into matzah, and you go to the mitzvah of matzah. For the mitzvah of maror, the Torah just says you should eat maror, and the Mishnah, it's not as clear what defines something as maror. How do we know which thing is maror, which thing is not maror? And we're going to discuss a little bit about that, and then make our way to specifically to Belgian Endives and whether they are or not maror. The Mishnah lists 5 types of maror. The Mishnah says you could be yotze maror with 5 minim: chazeres, ulshin, tamcha, charchavina, and maror. 5 different minim. And in the Gemara that follows, there are 2 discussions about those 5 minim. In the second of those discussions, the Gemara says that maror, you can't, because maror has to be similar to matzah, we learn out that you can't, for maror, a maror has to be a vegetable as opposed to a fruit. It has to be edible. It has to be something. The Gemara gives a number of descriptions and gives examples. The Gemara says maybe it should be this and this fish. The Gemara says no, it has to be gedulei karka. Maybe it should be this fruit. Each one of the Gemara describes what it can't be. Then the Gemara says, well, maybe the word maror means there's only one specific thing that we had in mind. One very specific thing, which Rashi or the Rashbam says means maybe the most bitter vegetable should be what's maror. And the Gemara says no, the word maroirin teaches us that there's more than one maror. It could have more than one thing. So this Gemara gives a little bit of definition of what's maror, but it still hasn't yet told us what is maror. It told us maror has to be vegetable. It can't be a fruit. It can't be a fish. It can't be a number of things, and there's more than one choice. But we don't yet hear a criteria yet of what makes something specifically into maror, and that's what we're going to try to look at is what makes something maror. The Mishnah listed 5, but where did those 5 come from? Why are those maror? And maybe are there more things, or why are those specifically the only ones that are maror? So, in the beginning of the Gemara list says there are 5 vegetables, and using their Hebrew names, chazeres and ulshin are such, and the Gemara translates those 5 vegetables into Aramaic. So the Gemara says that chazeres is chasa, or lettuce, as Rabbi Shechta said. It for sure means romaine lettuce, and maybe it even means other types of lettuce as well. The Gemara says the third one is tamcha, which is generally accepted that it means horseradish. As Rabbi Shechta said, there are those who have questioned that, but that's generally accepted that the third one is tamcha. Then, after the Gemara gives these translations of these 5 vegetables, the Gemara then brings 2 brises that have the exact same form. 2 brises exactly set up the same way. Each brisa first lists the 5 vegetables. Then another mandiyama comes and says, not only is chazeres okay, but also chazeres galim, a wild type of chazeres, or ulshei sadeh, in other words, a variation on those 5 vegetables. And then in each of the brises there's a third mandiyama, and that person says he gives all kinds of other vegetables that have seemingly no connection to the 5 listed in the Mishnah. Then the Gemara brings a Tosefta. The Tosefta says that brings 2 opinions. One says if you want to know what's maror, look to see when you break the branch, there's a sap come out of it, a milky white sap that comes out of the vegetable. If you see that tells you it's a bitter vegetable. And the other person says if you see that the vegetable has a light green color, it doesn't have the dark color either of leeks or of, I forgot the other vegetable, it has a lighter green color, which Rashi describes it as being light green. Rashi uses a French word, it should be pildash, which I looked up again over Shabbos. That word pildish means that it has a pale color. It's a pale green color. So it's not the dark green that's associated with the other one is a scallion with a very dark green vegetable. It has a lighter green color. So the Gemara says, "V'hilchasa." What you should do is you should look for both of these. Make sure that it doesn't have this. It has the sap, and it also has the light green color. And then you know that it's a bitter vegetable, and then you could use that for more. Okay. So sounds like we're getting a definition now. So now we know if we walk out into the street, we want to find out which of the vegetables should we use. So we should know. We should look for that. And in fact, there are people who do that. They'll say there are people who say you could eat dandelions. I didn't know this, but in fact, dandelions it seems are edible, and dandelions have a lighter green color. And you can pick them in your backyard, and they have a bitter taste. Okay. The question is, if there's such a rule that if it has a light green color and it has a milky sap, that it's kosher for maror, well, why didn't the Mishnah say that? Why didn't the Mishnah say that if you want to know maror, here's the rules, this is how you find it out? Why did the Mishnah say there are 5 kinds of maror? The Mishnah is just giving us common examples? Is it just like giving us the shopping list? This is the kind of things to look for? So in fact, the Achronim Amidayik, that the Mishnah and the Tosefta are arguing with each other. The Mishnah holds that there are 5 types of maror. And the Tosefta and those opinions in the Brisa that list other vegetables, they have a whole different opinion. They hold that if any vegetable that's bitter you could use. So we now know the Tosefta holds you could use anything bitter, basically, anything that's bitter, and you identify it by the color and the sap. And the Mishnah holds there's 5 specific things that you could use for maror. So before we get back to explaining the Mishnah, let's see first what the halacha is. We passing like the Mishnah that there are only 5 vegetables, or do we passing like the Tosefta that anything bitter is good enough for maror? So there are some achronim, the Beis Meir, Rosh Shlomo Kluger. There are some achronim who hold that the halacha is like the Tosefta. As I mentioned, the Gemara ends off the hilchasa. The halacha is this is what you should look for. So they say that means the din is anything that's bitter you could use, and the way you'll know is you look for the sap and you look for the light color, and then you'll know it's bitter and you could use it. But the Magen Avram and most of the other achronim point out that all of the Gedolei HaPoskim, the Rif and the Rosh and the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch and the Torah, all these poskim don't mention Bechlal the Tosefta. They don't mention it at all. Every one of them says there are 5 things you could use for maror, and these are they, chazeres, ushin, tamcha, whatever the 5 are, these are the ones you could use. So, in other words, they're ignoring the Tosefta, and they're telling you that there are only 5 things that you could use for maror. Meaning, the halacha is, you can't use anything that's bitter. You have to use one of these 5 things. So, we're back to our question. What's special about these 5 vegetables? What is it about these? They're not fruits and they're not fish and all kinds of things. But what are they? What are we looking for that makes it more kosher for maror than something else? So it seems that the answer to that question comes from a Gemara in Sukkah. The Gemara says that you're allowed to use for maror something called mirirasa da'agma. And Rashi says, mirirasa da'agma, even though the first word is mirirasa, means maror, it doesn't mean the maror in the Mishnah, it means mirirasa, it's a type of lettuce. It's a chazeres, da'agma that grows in the swampy area. It's a certain variation of lettuce, you could use it. And the Gemara says that really you would imagine that you should not be allowed to use it, because it's not called maror. It's not called mirirasa. It's called mirirasa da'agma. It's called the swampy lettuce. But since in the time of Matan Torah, when the Torah was given, this had a name just mirirasa. This was just called maror. Therefore, it's kosher. Later on, people added on another name, and they gave it the name mirirasa da'agma. They were more specific, and they called it the swampy lettuce. But since in the times of Matan Torah, this vegetable had the name maror, that's what makes it kosher. So what the Gemara is telling us is that the word maror that it says in the Torah, it says you should eat al matzos u'merorim, you should eat maror, doesn't mean, the word maror is not an adjective, it's not a description of the vegetable, it's not saying eat something bitter, it's saying eat, it's a proper noun, it's saying eat that thing that we call maror. Now, of course, it's called marror because it has a bitter taste to it. But the point is not to eat something bitter. The point is to eat the thing that's called marror, that has the name bitter. That's called bitter. An example that we could appreciate of that is what we call an orange. We call something an orange, obviously, because of its color. So if I would say to somebody, could you get me an orange, I'm referring not to something with an orange color. I don't want a persimmon. I want an orange, that fruit that we call an orange. And for the same money, if I go to Eretz Yisrael and the oranges are green, it's still an orange. In Eretz Yisrael they call it a tapuz, it's a tapuach zahav, even though it's green, because that's the name of this vegetable. It's a name. This is an orange, even though it's not orange. Or it's an orange and it's not something else, a different vegetable that has an orange color is not an orange. An orange, we use it the same way. It's a noun. The name comes because of a color that it has. And in our case, the word maror comes because of it has a bitterness, so it had the name maror b'shas matan Torah. But it's a noun, it's the name of a specific vegetable, these vegetables. So now we understand why in the Mishnah there are 5 vegetables. The Mishnah is telling you that these are the 5 vegetables. That nowadays they have all types of names, chasa and all kinds of names. But these are the 5 vegetables that the Torah is talking about when it talks about maror. If you look in the Rambam, it seems that the Rambam is saying exactly this. The Rambam says, "Meroirim ha'amurim b'Torah." The maror that's in the Torah is hein chazeres v'oshen v'atamcha v'charchavina v'hamorah. And then the Rambam sticks in another line. Kol echad mechameshes mina yerek elu nikr maror. All these 5 vegetables are maror. What is that? What is he telling us? So it seems that he's telling us the Gemara and Sukkah. These 5 vegetables are kosher because these are maror. These are called maror. We call them chazeres and oshin and tamcha, but these are the things that we call maror. And with this, we can understand a question that, for sure, after Rabbi Shechter mentioned it, and anyone at the Seder has thought of this question. A person is sitting at the Seder, and they're eating lettuce. They're eating romaine lettuce. And the romaine lettuce is not bitter. So how in the world does eating romaine lettuce, how is that the mitzvah to eat maror? It's not bitter. So it's going to be bitter in the future. But how am I doing the mitzvah by eating this thing that's not bitter? With the leftover lettuce, they make into salad to eat at the Suda. It's not bitter. It's not this horrible thing. So how could this be maror, this thing that I'm eating? In fact, there are achronim who argued that because you can't use it, you have to wait till it has a little bit of bitterness to it. But the accepted custom is like the Beis Yosef says, that even if it has no bitterness at all, you could use it. So how is that maror? And the answer is because we're not looking for the vegetable to taste bitter. We're looking. The Torah says eat maror, these 5 things. So I'm eating maror. It doesn't have to be bitter. It has the name maror because it has a bitterness associated with it. So that's why it has the name maror. But I just have to eat one of these things. So I'm eating maror. The fact that it's not bitter doesn't take away from its being kosher for the mitzvah. Okay. With this understanding, we're almost at the Belgian Endives. We have to, before that, make one stop at a fruit store. There are 3 vegetables that are very similar. If you walk into the store, unless you're trained or spent a lot of time, you wouldn't recognize the difference between them. Those 3 vegetables are chicory, endives, and escarole. Here's my first illustration. This is chicory. And the 3 of them, chicory and endives and escarole, look basically like this. If the thing wouldn't be on here, it's like an open lettuce. It's in fact similar to a chazeres, as you would think. It's an open lettuce. And each one of them, the leaves are a little bit of a different shape, a little wider or a little skinnier, with whatever different types of ends. And these are those 3 vegetables. In Latin, that's the way we botanically would refer to them, in fact, those 3 only have 2 names. That's how similar they are, that they only have 2 different names, not 3 names. And the 2 names are in the same, I don't know if it's a family or genus, they're very close. They're as close as they could be to being the same thing. If you look in the Mishnah, as I mentioned, the Mishnah lists 5 vegetables. Chazeres is romaine lettuce, or some kind of a lettuce. The 3rd one is tamcha. We will assume that means horseradish. In between those 2 is ulshin.
What?
Olshin. The Gemara translates Olshin. The Gemara translates Olshin as, well, when you read it first, you read it as Hindavi. Okay? In fact, it's Hindabi. Okay? The translates that it's Hindabi. How do I know that it's Hindabi? Well, because Hindavi or Hindabi doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, that doesn't help me. Maybe it helps people who speak Aramaic. But if you look in the Pirush HaMishnayos of the Rambam, in the Kapach edition, where he... Okay, let me back a second. The Pirush HaMishnayos of the Rambam's Pirush on the Mishnah was written in Arabic. It was written for the regular people to be able to understand the Mishnah. So he wrote it in Arabic. Later, when Jews moved to other countries where they didn't speak Arabic, so it was translated into other, or even maybe earlier, it was translated into Hebrew so that people who don't speak Arabic could also be able to use the Rambam's Pirush. And Rav Kapach took the original Arabic and he retranslated it and made significant changes in the translation based on his understanding of the Arabic. And in this is a classic example where in the Hebrew rendition of the Pirush HaMishnayos, you don't really see much in the translation. But if you look in Rav Kapach, he tells you what the Arabic word is. He translates it to you into a modern Hebrew, into Latin, and it gives you the whole range of what the thing means. And he tells you that Olshin, the Rambam says, is in Arabic Hindaba. I can't pronounce it well enough. Okay, but that word Hindabi is really an Arabic word. It's Hindaba, and that word means chicory. That's what that word means. The Beis Yosef says that he brings that the Marror was Mesupik what Olshin is, what the thing Olshin is, and the Beis Yosef says, nah, it's Pashut what Olshin is. What Olshin is in Divya, it's Endive. Okay, in his language, it's Endives. The Rav in the Mishnayos says that it means Andivya. The Chacham Tzvi says it means Endives. The Chok Yaakov brings those who say that it means Escarole. Okay, so you're hearing a lot. Everyone's got the same vegetable in mind, that Olshin means chicory or Endives or Escarole, which basically are the same thing. We have fancy names that we differentiate between them, but it's very reasonable that many hundreds of years ago they weren't as sophisticated, and they all called it the same thing. It was basically by that name. So it's very plausible, and it's very well established that the Olshin in the Mishnah refers to chicory. Before going on, I just would like to mention there are other opinions. The Aruch, which is a Pirush on Gemara, set up in the style of a dictionary. The Aruch has two translations for Olshin. One of his is Sinchuni, something to that effect, which there are those who identify as being of something we call Sanchez, which is a kind of a thistle. It's not really, but it's like a thistle, and it actually looks like a very large dandelion, and it has a bitter taste, and etc., etc. That's what he says. The Maril and the Bach say that it means kurbil, which in the way we would pronounce it would be kurbis, well, not with an L, but with an S at the end, kurbis, which is the German word for gourds and pumpkin, things in those family. Now I have to just say, when I first saw that, I was like, what does that mean? The heck could that be? I mean, pumpkins and gourds don't have any kind of bitterness at all. But in fact, if you look into it, there are in fact bitter members of that family. The most famous probably is what we say in Bam Madlikin, B'Shemen Pakuos. You say, you're not allowed to light with Shemen Pakuos. Pakuos is a word used in Tanakh. It has a very bitter taste to it. It looks like a small watermelon. It's called Kalasinth. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Okay, there are members of the gourd family that are bitter. So Kalasinth is possibly Charchavina. But whatever it is, it's not a. There are members of the family of gourds that have a bitter taste to it. So I'm mentioning this to say that although there are many who say, and there's good basis for saying, that the word Olshin means chicory or endives or escarole, there are those who differ. But we're going to continue with the assumption that in fact Olshin means this group, chicory and endives and escarole. But that takes us to the next thing, which is Belgian endives. Belgian endives. When I first said that this is chicory and escarole and endives, I can only imagine that some of the people here who have eaten endives said, the rabbi missed it over here because I've seen endives and they don't look anything like this. Right? Because the endives, if you walk into the store and ask for endives, you won't get this, you're going to get something that looks like this. Okay? This This is called Belgian Endives, and the two of these don't look, anything alike. This is as far apart as they could be. In fact, this vegetable, which we call Belgian Endives, in fact, is actually comes from chicory. The word endives is a misnomer. And I just want to explain for a minute what the connection is between these two things that look so absolutely different from each other. As the myths of these type of things go, about 150 years ago, the poor peasant farmers who only got the last little roots left over from the chicory, etc., you know how these stories go, left some of them in their basement, and they found out, lo and behold, that if you take the roots of chicory look like a carrot. They look like a white carrot. If you take the roots of chicory and you pack them together very tightly in a little container with a little bit of dirt or water, and you make it very dark, and you keep it warm, then lo and behold, in a few weeks, these roots, instead of growing more chicory that looks like this, the roots grow something that looks like this. For who knows what reason. But the chicory, instead of growing like this, which is a fine vegetable, instead you get this, which this is not such a great sample of it, but these are very beautiful, and it has a somewhat different taste than the chicory does. It's a lot, at least for many applications, it's prettier and it has a nice taste to it, and it grows in the winter, so that's another advantage. This sort of mistake that people discovered 150 years ago caught on, and it's now called Belgian Endives or Witloof. There's another name that it goes by. So there are people, quite a number of people, who eat this thing called Belgian Endives for Marror, who at their Seder, they're going to sit down and eat this for Marror. Now, they may eat this for Marror believing that it's Ulshin. There's no question that their Alta Zayda never ate that, because till 150 years ago, it didn't exist. There was no such thing. No one ever saw this before 150 years ago. So what happened was that the Alta Zayda ate this, and they called it endives, and with time they said, no, so we'll eat this also, which is called endives. It happens to be this is chicory, not endives, but it's called Belgian endives by mistake, so they eat this. And the shaila is, what we want to just discuss is, let's accept that this is kosher for Marror, that this is chicory, and this is what the Mishnah means as ulshin. Could you then eat this also? Is this good also? So let's think for a second. The Tosefta gave a test. It told us, if you want to know what something is Marror, it has a light green color, and when you break the leaves, a sap comes out of it. Now, I never saw a real Belgian endive plant. I don't know if sap comes out of it, but light green color it doesn't have. So, according to the Tosefta, we could debate whether this would or would not be kosher, because it doesn't pass the test of the Tosefta. It doesn't have the color that we're looking for. But we could debate that maybe it's just a test, and it's basically the vegetable. Okay, we could debate whether that would be kosher. But if you remember, the halacha is not like the Tosefta. The halacha is like the Mishnah, that what makes something kosher for Marror is if it's the vegetable, these 5 vegetables called Marror. So, our first look at it would be is the same root, the same plant could grow this and it could grow this. So if you're looking just for the name of a plant, you just want a plant. You say, that plant has to be kosher. Well, just like I could use lettuce that's not bitter because it's the plant, so I could use this, so it doesn't look like that. It doesn't have to look like that. It doesn't have to taste like that. It has to just be the same plant. So there's a way to get this to grow out of this plant. In fact, if you uncover the Belgian endives when they're growing, they grow green. The same shape, but green. That doesn't look nice, so they don't plant it like that. But it's basically the same plant. It's the same roots growing the same kind of a plant. So that would indicate that these Belgian endives should be kosher for Marror. The question on it is as follows. Our question we'll leave with as follows. The Gemara says, the Mishnah says, that if you cook your Marror, or you soak it in vinegar, the Marror is possible. And the Gemara explains, why is it possible if you cooked it? And the Gemara says it's possible because Marror has a certain bitterness to it, and if you take away that bitterness, you've ruined the Marror and you've made it not possible. Which is to say, it doesn't, as we said, it doesn't have to be bitter when you eat it. But if you take away its bitterness, you ruin the marrorus of this vegetable. Remember, it's called marror. If you ruin its marrorus, you've ruined the vegetable and you can't use it anymore. So if you cook it, it's no good. So the question is as follows. I took a vegetable, I took chicory, I took my ocean, and I did something to it. I changed it. I didn't cook it, but I took what used to look like this, and I made it look like this. So is that going to be kosher if I took the marror? Isn't it like cooking it? They don't taste. You can come over afterwards. You see, they don't taste the same. They have similar, and they're both bitter, but they're not the same. This is not this. So maybe I ruined the marror by doing this outside thing of I didn't cook it, but I replanted it in this strange way. Maybe that ruined the marror. So it would appear that question is wrong. That taina is wrong, and really, in fact, that it should be kosher. And the reason is as follows. First of all, the Gemara says that the reason why it's possible is because you made it less bitter. Cooking it takes away the bitterness. Now, from a simple test of just me tasting me, my kids did it also, a little bit of chicory and a little bit of endives, the endives, if anything, are more bitter than the chicory was. So it doesn't appear that we've taken away any bitterness from it. Now, the truth is, to really honestly do the test, we have to take chicory from the end of the season, meaning when it gets most bitter, after it's been in the ground for the longest, and try that against the endives. That we can't do. We can't make such a scientific test. But it seems that we didn't take away all of the bitterness from the thing. It's still plenty bitter. But then there's another thing. I mentioned that the Mishnah says you're not allowed to take away the bitterness from the marror. So the Chavaz Das asks a question. He says, whoever, maybe nobody will after Rabbi Shachta spoke, but anybody who is thinking of using horseradish, what are they going to do with their horseradish before they eat it? The Mishnah Berurah says it's a sakana to eat it whole. Okay, don't eat. Do not try this at home. Don't bite into the horseradish. So, what are you going to do with it? You're going to grind it up to make it have a less strong taste. You want to make the taste milder. Well, Chavaz Das says the Mishnah says you're not allowed to take away the bitterness. So what are you doing grinding it up? When you grind it up, you're ruining the vegetable. It used to have this really strong taste that the Mishnah Berurah says can kill you, and now you're going to grind it up to make it palatable, just so you'll turn bright red and all the kids will laugh at you and the whole, So what's the point? What are you doing? So Chavaz Das says you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to grind it up. You have to eat it straight. But the Chayodam defends the common minute. He answers the Chavaz Das's questions, but he defends the minute and he differentiates as follows. If I take marror and I ruin it using something external, I use it with water that I cook it in, I use it with vinegar that I soak it in, I use something external to it, then if you take even a little bit of the bitterness away, then you've ruined the marror. Even the slightest amount taken away, you've ruined the marror. But if I don't use anything external, I only use the vegetable itself, I just put it into a different form, then the marror stays kosher. So, if I grate my horseradish, there's nothing external, it's the same horseradish that it was, it's in a different form, which is a more milder form. So that's okay. As long as I leave a little bit of bitterness to it, I don't completely ruin all of it, then it's kosher. So therefore the Chayyim says, I can grind it beforehand, but don't grind it too early or you'll have no bitterness left and then it will be possible. As long as you have the slightest bit of bitterness left to it. So what have we done over here? We took this and we did something, l'chayra, what we did to it was, without anything external, we just replanted it. We got the plant to grow again, and we got it to grow, let's even say it would be less bitter. We didn't take away all the bitterness. There is definitely bitterness left to it. You can all taste it. It has a bitterness left to it. So l'chayra, I've used, without anything external, I've turned the chicory into a different shape, and l'chayra it should remain kosher. Again, one could argue on that there is something external. It's the special growing conditions and the darkness and the warmth and all those things. Okay, so that's debatable, but it would seem simpler to say that you've basically regrown the plant in a different way without using external things, and imkan it would be kosher. So let's just summarize for a minute. The Mishnah says there are 5 types of vegetable that are kosher for marror. The Tosefta says anything bitter goes. You can use anything bitter, any bitter vegetable is kosher. But the din is like the Mishnah, that the 5 vegetables, you can only use 5 specific vegetables, and those are the ones that at the time of Matan Torah were the ones that were called Marror. They had the name Marror. Those are the ones that are kosher. Of those 5 vegetables, we know 2 that we're pretty comfortable, that most of the world accepts as Marror. Excuse me, is the romaine lettuce, and most people will accept that horseradish is also kosher. And Olshin, there's a strong case to say that Olshin means chicory or endives or escarole, means that family. If we accept that this is in fact Olshin, then there's a very strong argument to say that although I've replanted it and made the chicory come out in a whole different shape and look to it, since it still has some bitterness left to it, it should remain kosher. Again, one could argue, but it seems that there's a reasonable case for that. A good jump.